Again, so before I go into how to become a better educator in higher education, it is worth asking a critical question. Why do we need educational development? For those of us who work as educational developers, criticism of the subject area is common, at least here in Sweden. So the main reason for the criticism stems from the frustration of being forced to participate in courses in teaching and learning in higher education. In Sweden, but also elsewhere, it is a requirement that you must take several courses in teaching and learning in higher education in order to get promoted. In other words, you cannot, for example, be promoted to associate professor or become a full professor in Sweden if you have not first completed a few courses. For understandable reasons, this creates some frustration among those who want to be promoted but have not yet completed all the courses in teaching and learning in higher education, as well as those who do not feel that they have any need for educational development because they have worked as educators in higher education for several years without any kind of problems. When they are also not given enough time in their jobs to further their education, where they are more or less expected to take courses alongside their regular duties, it is no wonder that some educators become frustrated when they feel that they are forced to take certain courses in teaching and learning in higher education that they themselves did not ask for. Then there's also criticism of individual courses given at certain universities as they are allegedly poorly executed. And to be frank, sometimes the courses that are organized are not of the quality that should be required of them. This has to some extent due to the difficulty of arranging courses that speak to educators from a very different subject areas. But there are also examples of when the courses that have been arranged have not reached the high standards that we should be able to, that we should expect. And just like as a side note, I can tell you that we at the Center for Teaching and Learning do not hear the same criticism that we generally see elsewhere. I believe that our courses strive to have high quality for one reason, but another reason why we don't see any major criticism is that we organize our courses in different ways than it is generally done in Sweden. Instead of offering a limited number of courses that everyone is expected to take, we offer several different elective courses that educators can choose from. We thus give them more choices to reach their 15 credits and thus bring back the freedom to choose their own educational pathway in their careers. So, but be that as it may, what I want to highlight here from the beginning is that there is a culture of resistance to higher education, teaching and learning in higher education, that now and then comes to the surface and that we as educational developers have to deal with. And while the criticism of the compulsory, especially if it's a question of compulsory courses that are perceived as substandard, um, the the idea that their courses are compulsory is perhaps the most common critique that we hear. It is not the only one that, and I want to highlight another one here. I want to highlight how educational development is part of a socio-economic trend that should be subject to critical scrutiny, which is then neoliberalism. So I don't want to describe neoliberalism in its entirely, in it is it completely here. And I also want to say that there are good things with neoliberalism and which I will not go into here as well. Ma- well, first of all, one reason why I can't describe uh, neoliberalism in its entirety is that it is an essentially contested concept and thus has different meanings depending on how it is used and who uses it. Therefore, it is problematic to use this as an explanatory term, as it is not possible to reach a consensus on how it should be used. What we generally see in the literature, however, is that it is used in a pejorative sense, where it has become a means of identifying a seemingly ubiquitous set of market-oriented policies as being largely responsible for a wide range of social, political, ecological, and economic problems. So when someone uses the term, they should just as you should when I use the term here, we should understand that it is a loosely theorized rhetorical tool. But as such a tool, it is possible to highlight certain trends in higher education that affect the view of educational development, which I will do here. So, thus, with these caveats, one can somewhat simplistically say that neoliberalism describes a socio-economic trend in primarily Western, so-called Western societies that is united by three broad beliefs: the benevolence of the free market, minimal state intervention and regulation of the economy, and the individual as a rational economic actor. As a societal trend, it has influenced all sectors of society, including higher education. And in concrete terms, this has meant that higher education is increasingly understood as a form of an economic transaction between autonomous actors, where the student is perceived as a consumer who seeks out an education and or educational institution to satisfy a need, for example, knowledge or some particular skill. So in the next video, I will describe how this neoliberal development in society affects educational development. See you there.